Something unbelievable is quietly happening behind the scenes in Denver right now, and almost nobody is talking enough about it yet. While the national media keeps focusing on the biggest stars and blockbuster headlines around the NFL, the Broncos may have just landed one of the most mysterious and dangerous defensive projects of the entire offseason. And the craziest part? This player was not a first-round pick, not a second-round pick. He was not drafted at all. But people inside football circles are starting to believe Denver may have discovered a hidden weapon with one of the most unbelievable family stories the NFL has ever seen. We are talking about a player built like a laboratory experiment, trained by generations of NFL minds, and carrying a football journey so insane that Hollywood is literally turning it into movies and documentaries. And once you hear how Sean Payton is connected to all of this, Broncos fans are going to lose their minds. But before we continue, make sure you hit that like button right now if you truly believe the Denver Broncos are building something special for the future. And I want every optimistic Broncos fan to comment this right now down below. Go Broncos! Our comeback season is coming, because after hearing this story, you might start believing Denver found a future difference maker when nobody else was paying attention. Because what we are about to talk about could become one of the most emotional and exciting stories connected to this team in years. The player everyone is suddenly talking about is Deshaun McMullough, an undrafted free agent who somehow slipped through the entire draft despite having one of the most unique football backgrounds imaginable. And the craziest part? This is not hype built on social media clips alone. This is a player with elite football bloodlines, incredible versatility, and a connection to Sean Payton that already has Broncos fans believing something special could happen. McMullough played at 3 major Power 5 programs: Indiana, Oklahoma, and Nebraska. Normally, when fans hear that a player transferred multiple times, they instantly assume problems behind the scenes, nil money drama, or locker room issues. But this situation was completely different. Every move he made was connected to family, loyalty, and football relationships that go back generations. His father, Dan Cola, played running back in the NFL and later became a respected coach at both the college and professional levels. Right now, he is part of the Las Vegas Raiders coaching staff, but his history across football runs deep. He coached in the NFL, won a Super Bowl as a coach, and became known as someone with a brilliant football mind. Because of his father's coaching career, Deshaun kept following him from school to school, staying close to his family instead of chasing attention or headlines. It started when Deshaun originally committed to Ohio State. That alone tells you how highly recruited he was coming out of high school. But when his father accepted a coaching job at Indiana, Deshaun chose family over prestige and followed him there instead. At Indiana, he immediately exploded onto the scene. He played edge rusher during his freshman season and dominated against elite competition. He finished with 4 sacks, earned freshman All-American recognition, and even became one of the highest-graded freshman pass rushers according to PFF during parts of the season. And this is where Broncos fans should really start paying attention. At that time, McMullough was only around 215 pounds while standing 6'5". Imagine that combination of length and speed. He looked like a raw athlete with unbelievable upside, and many people believed if he stayed in one system consistently, his draft stock could have skyrocketed into early round territory. Then came the move to Oklahoma, where everything changed again. Instead of staying as a traditional edge rusher, Oklahoma used him in a role called the cheetah. Broncos fans are already making comparisons because of how similar this sounds to the way Vance Joseph loves moving defenders around the field. At Oklahoma, McMullough lined up everywhere. Sometimes he played linebacker, sometimes nickel corner, sometimes box safety, sometimes edge rusher on passing downs. He became a true hybrid defender capable of doing almost everything. And honestly, when you hear this description, does that not sound exactly like the kind of chess piece Vance Joseph would love? The Broncos defensive staff has shown repeatedly that they value versatility. They want defenders who can disguise coverages, move around before the snap, and confuse quarterbacks. McMullough fits that vision perfectly. At Oklahoma, he showed he could survive in space against tight ends while also attacking the quarterback off the edge. That combination is incredibly rare. But the football side is only half of this unbelievable story. The family story connected to McMullough is honestly something Hollywood writers would struggle to create. His father, Dan, grew up without knowing who his biological parents were because he had been placed into foster care as an infant. For years, he had no idea who his real father was. Then, decades later, after becoming an NFL coach himself, he finally discovered the truth. The man who had mentored him through football for years, former NFL player and coach Sherman Smith, was actually his biological father. Neither of them knew it during all those years they worked together. Think about how insane that is. 3 generations connected to football, 3 generations connected to the NFL, and now Deshaun McMullough arrives in Denver carrying all of that experience, knowledge, and emotional motivation with him. And then there is the Sean Payton connection. Years ago, Sean Payton coached Dan Cola McMullough at Miami of Ohio before becoming one of the biggest names in football. According to the report, Sean Payton still remembered him years later and was texting during draft night saying how much the Broncos loved Deshaun and wanted to bring him to Denver. That matters. Teams do not aggressively pursue undrafted players unless they truly believe there is something there. Even more interesting, the Broncos reportedly made him one of their higher-paid undrafted signings. That tells you this was not some random last-minute camp addition. Denver specifically targeted him. Of course, there are reasons why he went undrafted. Injuries affected portions of his college career, and scouts reportedly struggled to define his exact position. Some teams viewed him as a tweener, not fitting perfectly into one traditional role. But modern NFL defenses are changing fast. More teams now value versatility over strict positional labels, and that could work heavily in his favor. The physical profile alone is fascinating. By the end of college, he had bulked up to around 245 pounds while still maintaining the athletic movement skills that made him dangerous earlier in his career. That kind of frame gives coaches options. And if Vance Joseph truly sees him as a movable defensive weapon, training camp could become very interesting very quickly. Broncos fans also know this franchise has a long history of undrafted players becoming major contributors. This organization has repeatedly found talent where other teams overlooked it. That is why some people inside Broncos country are already quietly wondering if McMullough could become the next surprise success story in Denver. What makes this situation even more exciting for Broncos fans is the timing of everything happening inside this organization right now. Denver is clearly trying to build a faster, more aggressive, more unpredictable defense, and players like Deshaun McMullough fit exactly into what modern NFL football is becoming. Defenses are no longer just looking for traditional linebackers or pure edge rushers. Coaches want chaos creators. They want defenders who force offenses to hesitate for even 1 second before the snap, and that hesitation changes everything. When you go back and study what McMullough was doing at Oklahoma in that cheetah role, you start realizing why some people inside football circles believe he could become a hidden gem for Denver. One snap he is lined up outside threatening the quarterback. The next snap he drops into coverage against a tight end. Then suddenly he is attacking downhill like a linebacker. Offensive coordinators hate preparing for players like that because you cannot easily predict what they are about to do. And honestly, Broncos fans should pay close attention to one specific detail from his college journey that says a lot about his mentality. Every single time his role changed, he accepted it. He never complained publicly. He never created drama. He never tried to force himself into one position just to protect his draft stock. At Indiana, he played edge. At Oklahoma, he became a hybrid defender. At Nebraska, he adjusted again and played more traditional linebacker responsibilities. That kind of adaptability matters a lot in the NFL, especially for undrafted players fighting for roster spots. Because here is the reality. Undrafted players do not survive on talent alone. They survive because coaches trust them. They survive because they are willing to learn quickly, contribute on special teams, handle multiple assignments, and stay mentally prepared even when opportunities are limited early on. Everything we are hearing about McMullough suggests he checks those boxes. And there's another part of this story that Broncos fans cannot ignore: the football intelligence in his family. Think about the environment he grew up around. His father coached professionally. His grandfather coached professionally. Football was not just a game in this family. It was part of daily life. Film study, preparation, defensive concepts, understanding offensive tendencies, those things